Before we begin, I want to issue a content warning. This presentation includes references to alleged abuse, sexual exploitation, and trauma. What you're about to hear is not meant to shock or entertain, it's a powerful, deeply personal testimony that emerged during the trial involving music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Today, we shift the focus away from fame and headlines, and instead center the voice of Cassie Ventura, a woman who, for the first time, spoke publicly and under oath about her experience. Her story isn't just about what happened behind closed doors. It's about the courage to break years of silence, and the importance of listening, really listening, when someone finally speaks. Sean Combs built a billion-dollar empire. To the world, he was the definition of success, a music pioneer, a savvy businessman, a cultural icon who shaped fashion, music, and lifestyle for an entire generation. His image was polished, powerful, and widely admired. But according to Cassie Ventura's testimony in court, that image concealed a far more disturbing truth. Behind closed doors, she described a reality far removed from the red carpets and flashing cameras, a world marked not by glamour, but by control, coercion, and violence. Under oath, Ventura spoke of a man who, in private, wielded his influence like a weapon. Her words cut through the illusion and exposed a deeply painful personal history, one defined by fear, manipulation, and trauma. This wasn't just a story of a toxic relationship. It was a testimony about the power structures that protect abusers, especially those with wealth, fame, and access. Ventura's account challenged the idea that success absolves cruelty. She described how surveillance, isolation, and the threat of retaliation kept her silent for years. In sharing her story, she wasn't only recounting what happened to her, she was highlighting the invisible prisons so many survivors live in. The emotional cage built not just from abuse, but from disbelief, denial, and the fear of being erased or ignored. She said that surviving meant learning how to disappear within someone else's empire, how to endure in silence. Cassie Ventura's testimony wasn't just an accusation. It was a revelation of how power can corrupt, how silence can be enforced, and how hard it is to reclaim your voice after years of being made to feel invisible. Her courage in coming forward reminds us that behind the headlines and beyond the fame are real people, real pain, and a truth that deserves to be heard. Among the most shocking parts of Cassie Ventura's testimony was her description of a hidden world beneath Sean Combs' Los Angeles mansion, a secret tunnel system that, according to her, was accessible through a concealed entrance near the pool. What she described wasn't the kind of eccentric luxury we associate with celebrity homes. This wasn't a quirky man cave or high-tech security feature. Ventura testified that what lay beneath was something far darker, a controlled environment filled with rooms that had soundproof walls, surveillance cameras, and spaces that appeared intentionally designed for filming and physical restraint. This wasn't fantasy. This wasn't fiction. According to Ventura, it was a reality built and maintained by someone with unlimited resources and unchecked power. She made it clear this space wasn't about pleasure or intimacy. It was about isolation, domination, and control. And perhaps most disturbingly, she said she wasn't alone in those rooms. She recalled seeing other women there masked, silent, and seemingly unresponsive. They weren't just background figures in a strange scene, they were living proof, she suggested, that this wasn't an isolated incident. This was a system. Ventura's testimony painted a terrifying picture. Not only of what allegedly happened in those underground rooms, but of what power can look like when it operates without accountability. It raised deeply unsettling questions. Who else was there? Who else knew? And how many voices have been lost in the silence? Her account wasn't only a revelation, it was a warning. That beneath the surface of fame and success, there can be places built to hide the truth. And people who've been made invisible by design. Cassie Ventura's testimony took an even darker turn when she spoke about what she called freak-offs, a term she used to describe orchestrated sexual encounters allegedly arranged by Sean Combs. According to her, these were not spontaneous or consensual moments. These were planned events, often involving multiple participants, heavy drug use, and the presence of cameras. Sometimes, she said, they happened in the underground spaces beneath his mansion. Other times, they occurred in hotel rooms or other private locations. But no matter where they happened, The pattern was the same: power, control, and coercion. Her words cut through the courtroom silence, agreeing while drugged is not consent. It was a powerful reminder of how blurred the lines can become when power is abused. Ventura made it clear these weren't choices made freely. They were decisions made while she was under the influence, in a constant state of fear, isolation, and manipulation. She described a pattern of psychological domination, surveillance cameras everywhere, threats of violence or exposure, and a deep, paralyzing fear of what would happen if she said no. This wasn't just emotional abuse, it was a system of control, reinforced by technology and intimidation. One incident she recounted involved being thrown from a boat during an argument, another moment of physical violence that reminded her just how disposable she felt. Even more disturbing was her claim that Combs kept recordings of these encounters. Not as memories, but as tools of leverage, of blackmail, of control. A digital leash, as she described it. These weren't isolated events. They were part of a wider pattern of exploitation, carefully designed to keep her compliant, quiet, and dependent. Ventura's testimony was more than just personal, it was a chilling look at how power, when unchecked, can be weaponized to strip someone of their autonomy, their dignity, and their voice. But by speaking out, she began to take that voice back, not just for herself, but for anyone who has ever been told their silence was the price of survival. The breaking point, Cassie Ventura testified, came the night before a major movie premiere. She described being pressured into yet another freak-off, this time at the Intercontinental Hotel. It was supposed to be a glamorous moment in her career, a night of celebration. Instead, it became one of the darkest and most defining nights of her life. According to her testimony, the hours leading up to the red carpet were filled with coercion and trauma. She said she walked the red carpet that next morning with bruises under the dress, an image that stands in haunting contrast to the flash of cameras and forced smiles. On the surface, she looked like a rising star. Behind the scenes, she was breaking. That night wasn't just another incident, it was the last straw. Ventura said something shifted inside her. The fear, the silence, the years of control had finally reached a point where she couldn't carry it anymore. She made a choice that would change everything. She left. Alone. She flew to New York without telling anyone. And for the first time in years, she said, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't freedom, not yet. But it was the first inhale of something she hadn't felt in a long time, the possibility of reclaiming her life. Recovery wasn't instant for Cassie Ventura. In fact, for a long time, it didn't look like recovery at all. She said that, at first, when people asked why she and Sean Combs had split, she would simply say, we just grew apart. It was easier than explaining the trauma. Safer than opening wounds that hadn't even fully surfaced yet. But healing has its own rhythm, and it often begins with remembering. Through therapy, Ventura began to confront the parts of her story she had buried. She started to unlock memories she had forced into silence, nights she had repressed, people she had met, faces she'd tried to forget. The fog of trauma began to lift, and with it came the painful clarity of what she had endured. And then, she made a decision that took as much courage as walking away. She filed a civil lawsuit against Sean Combs. Not for money. Not for attention. But for truth. I needed a record, she said. Something that said, I wasn't crazy. It happened. In those few words, she captured what so many survivors feel. The desperate need to have their experience acknowledged, written into the world in black and white. Not erased. Not dismissed. Her decision to go public sent shockwaves far beyond the courtroom. It opened the floodgates. More women came forward, others who, like her, had been silent for years. Her voice became a catalyst for something bigger. And it wasn't long before the justice system took notice. The FBI began investigating. Federal agents raided Combs' properties in connection with allegations of trafficking and coercion. What started as a personal act of reclamation became a spark that lit a much larger fire. Ventura didn't set out to be a symbol. She didn't want to be a movement. But her choice to speak up, rooted in the simple need to be believed, helped create space for others to do the same. Her recovery is still unfolding. But her truth has already changed the narrative, and it's forcing the world to listen. Cassie Ventura didn't rush to the spotlight after breaking her silence. She turned down interviews. She declined TV appearances. She could have capitalized on the media frenzy that followed her lawsuit and testimony, but she didn't. Why? In her own words, "I didn't want to become a symbol. I just wanted to be free." That sentence speaks volumes. After years of being controlled, surveilled, and silenced, what she wanted wasn't fame or vindication, it was freedom. The ability to live without fear, without the weight of secrets, without having to pretend anymore. And yet, despite her desire for privacy, Ventura's voice became one of the most powerful to emerge in this case. When asked what she hoped the trial would bring, she didn't pause. Her response was clear, focused, and unforgettable. Accountability. Not just for me, but for everyone who went through that house. For every person who disappeared into those tunnels and never spoke again. That wasn't just a personal wish, it was a call for justice. A plea for recognition of those whose stories may never be heard. People whose names we may never know. Her words became more than testimony, they became a lifeline for others still living in silence, still trapped in fear, still waiting for the right moment to speak. The courtroom was silent when Cassie Ventura finished her testimony. It wasn't because her words lacked impact, it was because they carried such weight that no one could speak. Cameras weren't allowed inside, yet the story spread like wildfire. Within moments, her testimony became the story, one that couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. Ventura's testimony did more than support a legal case, it shattered a powerful myth that wealth, fame, and influence can protect someone from facing the truth. For years, Sean Combs had been shielded by his empire, his public persona, and his resources. But in that courtroom, Ventura's voice pierced through the illusion of invincibility, and the world was forced to listen. Whether or not the trial ends in conviction is still to be seen. What matters now, though, is that the truth has emerged. The truth is out, Ventura said, and that moment will not be erased. Her bravery ensured that the shadows no longer had control over the narrative. And when the truth emerges, even from the darkest places, healing begins. It doesn't erase the pain, but it opens the door to recovery, to justice, and to the possibility of change. Thank you.